Imagine, just for a second, the absolute chaos of your social media feed right now.
Oh, wow. Right.
I mean, the algorithmic echo chambers, the endless cycle of outrage, just that unshakable certainty everyone seems to have when they're, screaming at each other in all
It's
caps.
exhausting. It really is.
It totally is. But what if I told you the exact blueprint for understanding all of that digital noise wasn't written by some Silicon Valley software engineer?
Wait, really? Then who wrote it?
A guy in 1964 holding an acoustic guitar and a harmonica.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. But I mean, it sounds like a massive stretch at first glance.
It does, yeah.
Because we're talking about the light speed velocity of the internet versus, a slow, methodical acoustic ballad. But the parallels are stunning once you look at the underlying mechanics.
The mechanics of how humans convince themselves they are entirely in the right. And that is exactly what we are doing today on this deep dive. We're exploring a comprehensive 10-part analytical text that completely dissects Bob Dylan's iconic 1964 track, With God on Our Side.
Yeah, and to be clear right up front, our mission today is not to do a music review.
Right. No music theory today.
No, we aren't sitting here analyzing chord progressions or the timbre of Dylan's vocal style or anything like that. We're using this text to decode the mechanics of what the source calls moral certainty.
Moral certainty. I love that framing.
Yeah, together we're going to help you, the listener, understand how nations, massive institutions, and even like the algorithms controlling your social media feed manage to manufacture a sense of pure innocence.
And justify conflict, right?
Right, and completely outsource ethical responsibility. The song essentially serves as a diagnostic tool.
It's less about the music and more about us.
Exactly. The real subject of this 10-part analysis is human nature, rhetoric, and how populations are taught to perceive themselves and their enemies.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how this blueprint works, we actually have to start with how the message is delivered.
Yeah, the delivery is crucial.
Right, because the source text makes a really crucial point early on. Politically charged art, or frankly, any political rhetoric, is almost always judged strictly by what it says.
Like, people just look at the lyrics.
Exactly. They read the transcript of the speech, they analyze the words, and they completely miss the power of the delivery mechanism.
What's fascinating here is the concept of tonal restraint.
Tonal restraint. So holding back.
Yeah. Think about how people usually argue about politics, especially today. It is almost always a theatrical outburst.
Oh, totally. Just loud and fast.
Right. It's aggressive denunciation. The speaker is trying to overwhelm you with their outrage. But Dylan does the exact opposite in this song. He relies on a traditional folk idiom.
So he's not shouting.
No, the narrator uses a plain, very modest speaking voice. He doesn't sound like some elite academic lecturing you, and he certainly doesn't sound like an angry protester.
He just sounds like an ordinary guy, repeating inherited wisdom, like someone casually reciting the history he learned in grade school.
And that relative calmness is the weapon.
How so?
Well, you don't educate a population into supporting a decades-long conflict by screaming at them 24 hours a day.
Right. People would just tune it out.
Exactly. You do it through routine. You do it through calm, normalized things. Textbooks, common phrases, national ceremonies, selective storytelling.
And the song's voice perfectly imitates that normalized process.
Yes, exactly.
Which makes sense because routine completely bypasses our defenses.
Yeah.
I mean, if a political leader shouts at me, I instinctively cross my arms, right? I put my guard up.
Naturally.
But if a folk singer just strums a comforting melody, I lean in.
You're disarmed.
Yeah. The text calls the engine driving this calm voice dynamic repetition. And honestly, it is brilliant. It's like the proverbial frog in boiling water.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Think about how the song actually functions. The melody is the cool water. It's comforting. It's a traditional folk waltz. It feels familiar and safe.
And the narrator just keeps repeating this central refrain, that every action taken in history is justified because we have God on our side.
Right. And the structure is incredibly deliberate.
It really is. The narrator starts with these sanitized versions of early American history. He mentions the cavalry and the massacres of Native Americans, then moves to the Spanish-American War, then the First World War.
And for those early verses, the listener might easily sing along.
Yeah, because the refrain fits the mythological history most people were taught.
But Dylan doesn't stop there. He turns up the heat.
Right.
He brings in the Holocaust.
Yes. And the melody doesn't change. It is still that same gentle acoustic strumming. The refrain doesn't change either.
But the content does.
Exactly. Suddenly, the narrator is singing about the murder of 6 million people in the ovens, and he is applying that exact same casual, comforting formula to it. The dissonance between the horrific historical reality and the calm, repetitive folk structure forces the listener to wake up.
That is dynamic repetition in action.
Yes. The song doesn't start by telling you the official worldview is a lie. It invites you inside that worldview, makes you comfortable, and then lets the historical facts accumulate.
Until the weight of the contradictions is just unbearable.
Precisely.
Which is such a massive takeaway for anyone trying to navigate today's discourse.
Yeah.
I mean, in an era where everyone is relying on caps lock, loud moral overstatement to make a point.
A calm, slow-building accumulation of facts is actually far more unsettling.
It really is. It lowers your defenses while deepening your discomfort.
And if we look at what stories that calm voice is telling, we see how the song exposes the way citizens are actually taught their own past.
Right, because the source text draws a very sharp distinction between academic history and what it terms public memory.
This is a huge point. Academic history is inherently messy. It involves competing narratives, uncomfortable evidence, constant revision.
It's complicated.
Very. Public memory, on the other hand, is like a heavily edited supercut.
A supercut. I like that. And the text introduces a vital concept to explain this editing process. It calls it selective innocence.
Yes, selective innocence.
Because nations don't build their collective identity on ambiguity, right?
Yeah.
Or complex geopolitical failures. They compress massive, highly complex, often deeply traumatic historical events into a very sparse, simplified narrative line.
Yeah, and the formula for public memory is almost always the same. We acted, we suffered, we prevailed, and we were fundamentally right.
It is a process of historical compression.
You take the sprawling multi-decade reality of something like the Spanish-American War, the Cold War, and you squeeze it down into a moral absolute.
You highlight your own virtue while completely minimizing or erasing your own violence.
And the text points out that this isn't accidental. It is a structural necessity for maintaining power.
Right.
This selective innocence serves a very specific social function. It protects national cohesion, it reduces collective shame, and it stabilizes authority.
Okay, but I want to push back on that for a second. I hear what you're saying about selective innocence, but if we strip that away, what's actually left?
That's a fair question.
Don't we need those shared stories just to keep a society from fracturing? I mean, if a country only teaches guilt, fragmentation, and endless suspicion about its own past, how does it maintain any solidarity at all?
Yeah.
A political community has to have some kind of unifying myth to function, doesn't it?
That is a critical point, and the source text explicitly validates that counterargument.
Oh, it does.
Yes, a political community absolutely needs a moral vocabulary. Shared memory is completely necessary for defense, for social solidarity, for basic survival.
So it's not saying public memory is inherently evil.
Not at all. The alternative to a unifying narrative isn't just pure objective truth. Sometimes the alternative is nihilism and total collapse.
Right.
So the song's target isn't the mere existence of public memory.
The target is what happens when that memory immunizes power against moral review.
Exactly the distinction. It's asking what happens when a nation's moral language becomes entirely immune to self-examination.
So you can have a shared history, but you have to be able to question it.
Right. A responsible historical culture can preserve a sense of belonging while still acknowledging its own contradictions and aggressions.
The profound danger is the fusion of innocence and power.
Where you believe your power is unconditionally righteous. Because if you only remember your past interventions as heroic rescues, well, you will eagerly support the next wave of violence.
But public memory is incredibly fragile, isn't it? If academic history is full of messy facts and uncomfortable truths, how does a nation prevent its citizens from looking at them?
That's the trick. You can't just teach the supercut in a high school textbook.
Right, someone will eventually read a different book.
Exactly. You have to make questioning that supercut a sin. You have to make it sacred.
And this brings us to one of the deepest themes in the source text, civil religion.
Civil religion is such a fascinating mechanism. And we should clarify, this isn't necessarily about formal theology or attending a specific church.
Right, it's broader than that.
It's about the fusion of political belonging with sacred language. It's what happens when political leaders start invoking transcendence, destiny, providence, or divine alignment to elevate standard national action.
Because the moment you wrap a political decision in the language of destiny, It moves completely beyond ordinary democratic accountability.
Totally.
I mean, if a policy is just a policy, you can debate it. You can ask for evidence. You can look at the budget. You can argue about proportionality.
Yeah.
But if the policy is framed as a sacred mission,
Or a civilizational necessity.
exactly.
Then what? Then anyone asking for evidence isn't just a political opponent. They are a moral contaminant.
Wow. A moral contaminant.
Yeah, they are framed as spiritually inappropriate or even treasonous. And this mechanism leads directly to what the text calls moral outsourcing.
Okay, I found this to be one of the most compelling ideas in the entire analysis. It's almost like corporate liability protection, but on a spiritual level.
That's a really good analogy.
Like in a corporation, you might sign off on a terrible decision, but you hide behind company policy to avoid feeling personal guilt. You tell yourself, I was just doing my job.
Right.
Moral outsourcing works the exact same way.
Right.
You transfer your ethical responsibility to a higher authority, whether that is the nation, historical destiny, or God.
And the result is a condition of role morality.
Role morality. So you're just playing a part.
Exactly. You stop acting as an individual human being with a personal questioning conscience, and you start acting solely as an instrument.
The loyal soldier.
The loyal soldier, the patriotic citizen, the defender of the faith. The belief in a higher sanction doesn't just justify the violence you might inflict on the outside world, it hollows out your own internal self-judgment.
Because the system is responsible, not you.
Right. You feel completely absolved of the consequences of your actions because the responsibility belongs to that higher authority.
Which is such a critical takeaway for your daily life, no matter who you are or what community you belong to. Whenever we delegate our trust to an institution or a political camp or a compelling narrative without maintaining reflective limits,
we risk moral abdication.
yeah, we surrender our personal judgment under the cover of duty.
And once you have outsourced your morality to the group, and once you have sanctified your cause, you need somewhere to direct all that righteous certainty.
You need a target.
You need an enemy.
Right. To really grasp this, we have to look at the historical context the song was born into, the early 1960s.
Peak Cold War paranoia.
Exactly. The era of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the very real fear of nuclear annihilation. The world felt incredibly fragile, and political rhetoric had divided the entire globe into a strict, unforgiving binary.
Freedom versus tyranny. Light versus darkness.
And the song explicitly addresses this in the verses about learning to hate the Russians.
Yeah, and the crucial insight the text pulls from this isn't just that enemies exist, it's that hatred and war-mindedness are socially learned behaviors.
We aren't purely spontaneous or innate.
No, the narrator in the song doesn't invent the worldview he carries. He receives it.
It is a generational transfer.
Yes. Hatred is inherited through family stories, school lessons, news habits, and cultural rituals. The text describes this as an emotional economy.
An emotional economy. How does that work?
Well, an enemy image performs a vital psychological service. It simplifies a terrifying, highly uncertain world.
Oh, I see.
It reduces all that sprawling geopolitical complexity into a pure comic book binary of good and evil. It provides instant orientation and a deep sense of belonging to the in-group.
Okay, let me pause you there, because I imagine someone listening is thinking, wait a minute. During the Cold War, and certainly today, there are very real physical threats out there.
Sure.
We can't pretend every global conflict is just an imaginary misunderstanding driven by propaganda. So, does the song imply that all enemies are just invented fictions?
No, and the text is very careful to balance this. It clarifies that the song does not demand blindness to actual danger.
Okay, good.
Intelligence gathering, defense planning, recognizing authoritarian threats, those are necessary functions of any functioning society. The critique is not that danger is imaginary.
Then what is the critique?
The critique is focused entirely on the rhetorical excess.
How the danger is packaged and sold.
Precisely how it is packaged. The text asks how real danger is magnified, distorted, and morally packaged to anesthetize the public's moral imagination.
So it takes a real threat and turns it into a myth.
Yes. It is about how fear is used to license a permanent state of moral simplification, where you are no longer able or willing to perceive the other side as fully human.
Right.
It's the vast difference between recognizing a strategic military threat and mythologizing an entire population into a cartoon villain so that any action taken against them feels justified.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because everything we've talked about so far, the tonal restraint, the selective innocence of public memory, the civil religion, moral outsourcing, the emotional economy of manufacturing enemies.
It's a lot, yeah.
It is. And all of this was diagnosed by a folk singer in the 1960s facing down the Cold War. But the mechanics of that moral certainty didn't die when the Berlin Wall fell.
They definitely didn't disappear.
No, they just got automated.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the song serves as a startlingly accurate diagnostic tool for the modern digital age.
It really does.
The platforms we use every single day are fundamentally built to compress thought into highly shareable forms. The complex conflicts of the world are still being reduced to simple binaries.
But now it happens at light speed.
Exactly, through short video clips, memes, and algorithmic feeds.
So scrolling through a polarized social media feed is basically experiencing Dylan's song in real time.
That's a brilliant way to look at it.
The algorithm is the new acoustic guitar. It is playing the repetitive, comforting melody. It feeds you selective clips, tailored historical compressions, and identity-coded commentary that mathematically prove your side is perfectly innocent and the other side is entirely evil.
And what replaces the folk refrain of the 1960s is algorithmic repetition.
Algorithmic repetition.
Yeah, it is the constant, unending surfacing of similar content through recommendation loops. The platform logic itself rewards identity signaling and emotional certainty.
And nuance just gets crushed.
Nuance isn't just ignored. It is actively punished by the system. Because nuance requires a pause, and a pause doesn't drive engagement.
Right. The text mentions this concept of accelerated solidarity, which perfectly describes the modern internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Online communities can generate a profound sense of belonging incredibly quickly. You find your people, you find your camp, you get that dopamine hit of shared outrage.
But that speed comes at a massive cost to reflection.
Because you can't step out of line.
Exactly. When your public identity becomes entirely entangled with your moral performance online, self-correction feels reputationally dangerous.
You cannot admit your side might be wrong about a detail, or that a piece of evidence is flawed.
Because then you risk being exiled from the group. And this leads directly back to the moral exemption the song warns about.
Where you stop applying ethical standards to your own side.
Right. You start believing that your side doesn't need to submit to the same ethical standards that you apply to everyone else.
Because history, or in this case, the algorithm, has already confirmed your verdict.
Yes.
It is fascinating how secular digital discourse perfectly imitates the structure of 1960s civil religion.
It really is the same mechanism.
You don't necessarily need to invoke God explicitly. You just need to invoke the absolute, unquestionable righteousness of your digital camp. You completely outsource your conscience to the timeline.
And the consequence of this constant information overload is that citizens become entirely overwhelmed by certainty-driven discourse. Well, when every post is a screaming emergency of good versus evil, it becomes incredibly difficult to distinguish actual evidence from ritualized allegiance.
Everything just blurs together.
Right. The text points out that to survive this, we need to cultivate civic humility.
Civic humility, demanding that our conviction be disciplined by an awareness of our own limits.
Yes. In a fast-moving crisis, whether it is global politics or, a massive cultural debate online, audiences do need orientation. We do need clarity to act.
We can't just be paralyzed.
Right. But we must forcefully resist confusing clarity with oversimplification. Civic humility is the willingness to judge a situation seriously, to take a stand, while actively recognizing your own fallibility.
So you can have strong beliefs.
Absolutely.
You can advocate for justice, you can defend your community, you can recognize real threats.
Yes.
But the moment you claim truth without remainder and innocence without examination, you have fallen into the trap. You've stopped thinking and started just reciting the refrain.
And that is exactly why a simple, repetitive folk song from over half a century ago still matters so deeply today.
It's a warning.
It is. It trains our suspicion. Not a cynical suspicion against truth itself, but a healthy, necessary suspicion against the comforting rhetoric of automatic innocence.
Wow. Okay, let's synthesize the journey we've just been on.
Let's do it.
We started by looking at the quiet power of a calm voice and dynamic repetition, seeing how a gentle melody can expose moral contradictions far better than a theatrical shouting match.
Right.
We explored how nations edit their pasts, creating a selective public memory that protects social cohesion, but licenses future violence through historical compression.
Which is so crucial to understand.
And we look at civil religion and how wrapping political policy in the language of destiny allows us to outsource our moral responsibility to the system.
We also examine the social manufacturing of enemies, understanding how hatred is inherited and used as an emotional economy to simplify a terrifyingly complex world.
And finally, we saw how all of these mid-century mechanics have been supercharged by the platform logic of the digital age, turning social media algorithms into engines of unshakable, automated moral certainty.
It really is a phenomenal framework for navigating the noise of the modern world.
It is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own. Something that builds on everything we've discussed today, but looks toward what's coming next.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If our historical past was edited by nations to create public memory, and our digital present is being edited by algorithms to create accelerated solidarity, what happens to the future?
That's a heavy question.
As artificial intelligence begins to generate our media, synthesize our news, and summarize our global conflicts in real time, are we entering an era where public memory is manufactured instantly without a human author at all?
Wow.
If the algorithm was the new acoustic guitar, AI is an entire automated orchestra. Who is writing the melody tomorrow? And will we even realize we are singing along?
That is something to think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives around you, keep looking for the nuance in the noise, and remember that real clarity usually requires a little bit of discomfort. Until next time, stay curious.